SPSS introduction. Okay, so all startup procedures are going to look slightly different, right? Depending on what kind of computer you're using and what kind of version of SPSS you're using. So if you're using a Mac, I'm a Mac user, but I also like PCs, and there's also Unix. So if you're used to more of like the Mac operating system or a Windows, based system, that's fine. You can still use SPSS. It might just look slightly different. Again, with statistics, just you gotta stay loose. You gotta stay okay with everything. And it doesn't look exactly perfect or exactly the way the screenshot looks. That's okay. Yours is probably just a different version. So what we're going to start out with here is when you first log in to SPSS, you'll see like a little icon, right? And that tells you that your computer has SPSS. So whether you're doing it here at the campus, or you're borrowing a friend's computer that has SPSS, or you elected to get that 6-month subscription directly through IBM SPSS, you should have this little icon there. So once you go on there and you can see the little icon, you click it. Sometimes it's going to bring up a dialog box. It looks something like this. You can go through and you get little tutorials or helps or things like that. That's fine. But sometimes they're not there, and that's okay. Right, so again, this is just the previous slide, just shrunken down. So what you want to do is you want to click on that top one. So I'm going to go back up just a little bit. So this is the new data set, right? And then if you don't want to see this dialog box every time, you just click on don't show me this dialog box in the future. Okay, so once you click on the new data set, it should come up with a screen that looks kind of like this. And again, depending on what version you're using, I'm using SPSS version 25 for this PowerPoint, but yours might look slightly different. So once you click on new data set, it's in the top left-hand corner, and then click open is towards the bottom. However you want to get to this data set data window. Okay, and again, if you're not presented with a dialog box at the beginning, that's okay. SPSS should open automatically with the blank data window, so you should see this data window there. And the data window and the output window really provide the basic interface for SPSS. Okay, so one of the keys to success with SPSS is knowing how it stores and how it uses your data. And to illustrate the basic data entry of the SPSS, we're going to use these two people as our samples, right, as our students. So Sally, her student ID is 4593. Again, these are all just made up people. She took Psych 101 class last semester on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. She doesn't work outside of school, so she's a full-time student. That's all she does, and earned an 85% in her Psych 101 class, so a really strong grade. And she reports not being a morning person, so she definitely functions a lot better in the afternoon. I'm sure some of you who are listening to this are like, I'm Sally, right? And then we have Mark. His school ID is 1901, and he took Psych 101 on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. But he took his in the morning. He took his at 8 o'clock in the morning because he says he's a strong morning person, and he earned a little bit lower grade. He earned 83% in that Psych 101 class, and he does work part-time. Okay, so what we have here is we have some data. We have 2 students, and we have some sample data that we're going to use. Okay, so our variables, and again, a variable is just anything that can vary from one person to the other. Number one, their ID. Obviously, they're going to have different ID numbers. Your ID number is different than a fellow classmate here in statistics. And then the day of the class, right? So was it a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class? Was it Tuesday, Thursday class? So a variable is anything that can change. Same thing with class time. So you can take an 8 o'clock class, a 9 o'clock class, a 10 o'clock class, an online class, right? And then also if you're a morning person, you can either be a morning person or not so much a morning person. The final grade is also a variable, right? So somebody could have gotten a 43%, someone could have gotten 100%. So again, that can vary between the different participants. And the last variable we're going to look at is whether or not the student works. And again, if they work part-time or full-time, or they don't work at all and they are just strictly a full-time student. Okay, so those are our variables we're going to use. Okay, so again, a survey given to several students, we're just going to use 2 of them. Okay, so going back to our windows, but our data window here, right? We're going to start entering in some of the data from our sample students. So the rows, this is represents the participants. This is going to be entered in horizontally, so left to right, and then columns. Up and down, the vertical ones, those represent the variables, right? So horizontal represents participants, the rows, and then vertical represents the variables. Those are in your columns. Okay, so a quick thing about variables. When you name your variables, variables need to be beginning with a letter and they can't contain any spaces. So Q7 is okay, but 7Q is not, right? Pre_test is okay. Pre-space test is not okay. So just kind of some rules there. SPSS will freak out on you and be like, you can't continue. It's a computer system, so it's not a human doesn't understand that, well, yeah, when I say 7Q, I mean Q7. It's very literal. It has to start with a letter, and it can't contain any spaces. Okay, so let's see here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the Variable View tab, because we're going to enter in all our variables first. And the variables, again, are those ID numbers, and if they're a morning person, if they work, that kind of stuff. Now, the Variable tab is usually at the bottom of the screen. You'll see a Data tab and a Variable tab. So click on the Variable tab, and you can return to Data View just by clicking on the Data View tab. And again, all variables must be given a name. Okay, so in the numerical values, right, or the numerical value labels, they all need to be numerical, right? So even though we say that somebody goes to class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can't just type in Monday, Wednesday, Friday against a computer system. So we're going to say 1, our numerical value of 1, equals Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And 2, right, because it's numerical value of 2, is going to mean that's like our code for, well, they took a class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And from the variable view screen, it allows you to create and edit all the different types of variables in your data. And each column represents some property of that variable. And each row represents, a different variable. So all variables must be given a name. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on where it says values. So if you're in SPSS, it's over like 3 or 4 spaces, values, and then let's start labeling them, right? So, and SPSS definitely defaults to numeric code that's 8 digits wide and 2 decimal places displayed. SPSS holds information more than 2 decimal places, right? So if your data is more than 8 digits to the left of the decimal place, they'll be displayed in scientific notation. And like I said, SPSS maintains accuracy beyond the 2 decimal places, but all the output will be rounded to 2 decimal places unless you otherwise indicate it in that decimal button or the decimal column. You don't have to, though. Okay, so we have, we're going to type in like 1 and then in value, and then the label is going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. And then we're going to type in 2 for the value, and our label is going to be Tuesday, Thursday. We're going to do that for each one of the variables. So our morning, if you're a morning person, we're going to give that a value of like 1, and if you're an afternoon person, it's going to be a value of 2, right? And then if you are a morning person, value of 1, and not a morning person, value of 2. If you don't work at all, you're just a full-time student, then you're going to get a value of 0. If you work part-time, you get a value of 1, and full-time, a value of 2. No coding is really needed for student ID numbers or their percentage earned. Because you're gonna, the values serve as their own labels, right? So if I earned an 89%, well, that's what my value, that's what my label is. And the same thing with ID numbers. You don't have to code an ID number; it already is a code. Okay, so you're going to go through and you're going to click all that. And sometimes when you like click on values, you have to like double click it or like really click it. It's somewhere like in this bottom right hand corner of the value. And it should come up. So again, we're going to do all of it. So it should look like this, right? So whenever you push OK and you're fine, it should look like that. Okay, and then under labels, what I want you to do is you just click on it and you can like really specify what that is, right? So in our example here, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday being 1s, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's the day of class. And then for the time of the class, well, 1 was a morning and 2 was the afternoon, so time of class. And again, no for morning person. So this is just kind of giving you more details here. Right? It's more like for us humans that actually use the SPSS, be like, what was I labeling that again? Okay, and then you're going to click on data because now we're going to start entering in their data for the specific students, right? Okay, so again, I think Sally, right, was 4593, and she said that she took her class in the afternoon, so that would give her a 2, right? And then Monday or Tuesday, Thursday, so it was a 2, and then the time was in the afternoon, which gave her a 2. She was not a morning person, so we gave her a 0. And you're actually entering in each of these different numbers, right? So you're actually manually entering this, so pay attention to what you're clicking with your fingers. And then she earned it 85%, and she doesn't work, right? You're going to do that for each one of the students. Again, we only have 2, but you're going to enter in all the data horizontally, right? So because this whole section right here, this whole row for her, that's all her data. And then we go down to Mark's data right here. So everything is entered in horizontally. Okay, if you click on this button right here, it has like A1, it has like a little arrow kind of going both of them, right? That's the value labels icon, and the cells are going to display value labels rather than looking like correspondent codes. So if you go back and forth, and you can toggle back and forth. So if you're entering in your codes here, and you're like, oh yeah, Mark took his class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so it was a 1, and then he, took his in the morning because he said he was a morning person. He scored an 83 in the class, and he works part-time, right? But this is just kind of like numbers, right? This is what our computer SPSS software like understands. If you click on this, and that's kind of the top part of SPSS, you'll see this. You'll see like, oh yeah, that's what I'm really understanding. If you want to click back to the codes again, click that. So click, 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 you'll go back and forth, you'll toggle between those two screens. Okay, you can also do it by going up to like view labels and then clicking on like the view button at the very, very top, and then going down to like view labels, but people just like that little button a lot easier because it's right there and it's simple. Okay, so saving data. So similar to most Windows-based products, you save it, like you go up to File, you go to Save As. For this class, for lab and statistics, I want you to save it as your last name, first name, lab, and then the number of the lab. So for example, my name is Jennifer Moore, and say I was working on lab number 5, I would be Moore, Jennifer, lab 5. Now, when we get a little bit further in the semester and you have a couple different outputs that you're putting in for labs, you can name them different things after that, but it'll always have your last name, your first name, and whatever kind of lab or unit number we're working in. SPSS will add that .sav for you, so you don't have to add it manually. It'll do that automatically. So right now we're just doing input. Right, we're just doing data entry, so yours will be saved as .sav. Going forward, we're going to have output, right? So when we start running statistical analysis like chi-square or doing a regression analysis, and that's going to be saved as .spv, and then .sps for a syntax file. But again, that's later on the semester. And then you exit like normal, right? So you exit. I know some versions will have you like quit versus exiting. Either way, you get out. So I do have a whole nother video that has me going through all of this together, but I just kind of wanted to have it so you could, in this format too, so I can like talk you through it. That way, I don't know, you have it both ways. All right, reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.